Marcus Chen had always been ordinary. 25 years old, working as a construction engineer in Denver, living alone in a small apartment with his cat. His biggest excitement came from weekend hiking trips in the Colorado mountains. That changed forever on a Tuesday evening when the sky split open. The purple tear in reality appeared directly above downtown Denver, crackling with energy that made every electronic device within 50 miles shut down. From this cosmic wound stepped beings that looked almost human, but not quite. They were tall, elegant, with skin that shimmered like starlight and eyes that held depths of ancient knowledge. Marcus had been walking home from work when the portal opened. While everyone else ran screaming or stood frozen in terror, he found himself staring up at the impossible sight with curiosity rather than fear. That's when she noticed him. Zara Lynn was her name, though Marcus wouldn't learn that until later. She was different from the other aliens who emerged from the portal. Where they moved with cold efficiency, cataloging humans and their technology, she moved with grace and wonder. Her silver hair flowed like liquid metal, and her violet eyes seemed to see through everything except him. She descended from the hovering platform where her people had gathered, ignoring the shouts of her companions. Her bare feet touched the asphalt 20 feet from where Marcus stood, and time seemed to slow. The chaos around them faded into background noise as their eyes met. "Interesting," she said in perfect English, though her voice carried musical tones that no human throat could produce. "You're not afraid?" Marcus found his voice, though it came out rougher than usual. "Should I be?" She tilted her head, studying him with the intensity of a scientist examining a fascinating specimen. "My people would say yes. We are the Veltar, conquerors of 17 star systems. We have come to evaluate your species for potential integration or elimination." The words should have terrified him, but something in her expression suggested this wasn't the whole story. "And what do you say?" A smile played at the corners of her mouth, revealing teeth that were slightly too sharp, slightly too white. "I say you intrigue me, human. What is your designation?" "Marcus. Marcus Chen." "Marcus," she repeated. And somehow the way she said it made his ordinary name sound like poetry. "I am Zara Lynn of House Starweaver, 3rd Navigator of the Conquest Fleet." She paused, then added something that would change both their lives forever. "And I claim you as mine." The declaration rang out across the street with the force of a thunderclap. Conversation stopped. Her fellow Veltar turned to stare, their expressions ranging from shock to outrage. But Marcus barely noticed them. He was lost in Zara Lynn's eyes, trying to understand what she meant. "Claimed?" he managed to ask. "It is our way," she said, stepping closer. Up close, he could see that her skin really did shimmer, tiny points of light dancing beneath the surface like captured stars. When a Veltar finds something of value, something worth preserving, they claim it. It becomes theirs to protect. Before Marcus could respond, another alien approached. This one was clearly military, with scars crossing his face and armor that looked like it had seen 1,000 battles. He spoke in the Veltar language, rapid and angry. Zara Lynn responded in the same tongue, her voice sharp as steel. The argument drew more of her people. Soon Marcus found himself at the center of a heated debate he couldn't understand, though the tone made it clear that Zara Lynn's claim was controversial. Some of the aliens looked at him with disgust, others with curiosity, and a few with something that might have been respect. Finally, an older Veltar with robes instead of armor raised her hand for silence. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute authority. She looked at Marcus for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "The claim is acknowledged," she said in English, clearly for his benefit. "But it comes with consequences, young Starweaver. Are you prepared for what this means?" Zara Lynn straightened, and Marcus caught a glimpse of steel beneath her beauty. "I am, matriarch." The older alien turned to Marcus. "And you, human? Do you accept this claim?" Be warned, to refuse would be unwise. But to accept means leaving everything you know behind. Marcus looked around at the familiar street, the human faces peering from windows and doorways, the life he'd built in this small corner of Earth. Then he looked at Zara Lynn, at the hope and determination in her alien features, and made a decision that surprised even himself. "I accept." The matriarch nodded. "So be it. 3 days, Starweaver. Complete your assessment of this world, then return to the fleet. Your human comes with you." She turned and walked away, the other aliens following. Zara Lynn remained behind, watching as the portal in the sky began to close. 3 days, she said softly. 3 days to show you why this matters. Why what matters? She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Why claiming you might be the most important thing I've ever done? Not just for me, but for both our species. As the last of the portal's light faded and the world's electronics began flickering back to life, Marcus realized his ordinary life was over. But looking at the extraordinary being beside him, he found he didn't mind at all. The next morning, Marcus woke up wondering if the previous day had been an elaborate dream. Then he saw Zara Lynn sitting cross-legged on his apartment balcony, watching the sunrise with an expression of wonder that no human could fake. She had stayed the night, though she hadn't slept. Instead, she'd spent hours observing everything in his small apartment, with the fascination of someone discovering a new world. His coffee maker, his books, even his cat Whiskers had received careful study. "Your star is smaller than ours," she said without turning around when he joined her on the balcony. "But the light feels warmer somehow." Marcus rubbed his eyes, still trying to process that he was having breakfast conversation with an alien. "How can light feel different?" "Everything feels different here," she said, finally looking at him. In daylight, her alien nature was even more apparent, but somehow also more beautiful. "My people have conquered many worlds, Marcus. I've seen the surrender of proud civilizations, the breaking of ancient spirits. But this," she gestured at the city waking up below them. "Your people continued their lives after seeing us. They didn't surrender or despair. They adapted." She was right. Looking down at the street, Marcus could see people going to work, children waiting for school buses, delivery trucks making their rounds. Yes, there were news vans and military vehicles too, but humanity hadn't stopped because aliens had appeared. They'd incorporated the impossible into their Tuesday and moved on. "Is that unusual?" Marcus asked. "Extremely. Most species either flee in terror or attack us immediately. Your people did neither. Some of your military units took defensive positions, but when we made no aggressive moves, they simply watched. Waited. Several of your leaders even sent communications requesting dialogue." Marcus felt a strange pride in his species. "What did your people think of that?" Zara Lynn's expression darkened. "Most saw it as arrogance that needed to be crushed. They believe any species that doesn't immediately submit must be eliminated as a potential threat." "But you disagree?" "I think they're afraid," she said quietly. "For 3,000 years, the Veltar have been the dominant force in this part of the galaxy. We're stronger, faster, more advanced than any species we've encountered. But your people..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Yesterday, when I claimed you, do you know what you did?" Marcus shook his head. "You asked questions. Even facing something completely unknown, something that should have terrified you, you remained curious. That's not just brave, Marcus. That's evolution in action." Before he could respond, his doorbell rang. Marcus tensed, expecting soldiers or government agents. But through the peephole, he saw his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, holding a casserole dish. "Marcus." "Dear," she called through the door. "I made extra tuna casserole. Thought you and your girlfriend might be hungry after all that excitement yesterday." Zara Lynn raised an eyebrow at the word, girlfriend. But she seemed more amused than offended. Marcus opened the door, not sure what else to do. Mrs. Patterson was 78 years old and had lived in the building longer than anyone could remember. She took one look at Zara Lynn's shimmering skin and violet eyes and nodded approvingly. "Oh, she's lovely," Mrs. Patterson said, handing over the casserole. "Though you'll want to get her some sunglasses, dear. Those eyes are quite striking. People will stare." "Mrs. Patterson," Marcus said carefully, "you do realize she's different." Of course, my Harold was different too. Came from Ireland with nothing but the clothes on his back and an accent you could cut with a knife. People stared at him too. She patted Zara Lynn's arm gently. "But different can be wonderful, can't it?" Zara Lynn looked genuinely touched. "Thank you for your kindness." "Think nothing of it, dear. We're all just people trying to get by." Mrs. Patterson headed back to her apartment, then called over her shoulder, "And Marcus, next time warn a girl before bringing home company. I would have made a bigger casserole." After she left, Zara Lynn stared at the closed door for a long moment. That was unexpected. Mrs. Patterson's like that. She once helped a drug dealer's kid with homework because she said the boy needed math more than judgment. "Your species continues to surprise me," Zara Lynn said. "On my world, contact with unknown beings follows strict protocols. There are rituals, ceremonies, careful evaluation of threat levels. But your neighbor simply..." Accepted me. Maybe that's our strength, Marcus said. We're good at adapting. Perhaps. But adaptation alone won't save you from what's coming. Her expression grew serious. Marcus, I need you to understand something. The 3 days I've been given aren't just for assessment. They're a countdown. To what? To invasion. If my people decide your species poses a threat, they'll begin orbital bombardment. Your cities, your governments, your military installations, all destroyed from space. Those who survive will be relocated to work colonies. The casserole dish suddenly felt very heavy in Marcus's hands. And if they decide we're not a threat? Integration. Your planet becomes part of the Veltar Empire. Your people become citizens but second-class ones. Your culture, your independence. It all disappears slowly over generations until you're just another conquered species telling stories about the old days. Marcus set the casserole down with shaking hands. Those are the only options? Not anymore, Zarlin said, and something in her voice made him look up sharply. There's a third option, but it's dangerous. For both our species. What kind of dangerous? Instead of answering directly, she moved to his computer, which had been dead since the portal opened. She touched the screen and it flickered to life, displaying information in Veltar symbols that shifted and changed like living things. I'm going to show you something, Marcus. Something that could change everything. But once you see it, there's no going back. Are you ready? Marcus looked at this impossible woman who had claimed him, who spoke of saving both their worlds, who treated his neighbor's kindness like a precious gift. He thought about Mrs. Patterson's casual acceptance, about humanity's stubborn refusal to despair, about the choice between conquest and extinction. Show me, he said. Zarlin smiled, and for the first time since he'd met her, it was a warrior's smile. Then let me tell you about the Veltar civil war that's been brewing for centuries, and why claiming one human might be the spark that finally starts it. The information flowing across Marcus's computer screen looked like liquid starlight, but as Zarlin touched different symbols, images began to form that he could understand. Star maps, battle formations, population centers across dozens of worlds. The Veltar Empire isn't as united as it appears, Zarlin began, her fingers dancing across the display. For 3 millennia we've expanded through conquest, but that growth has created fractures in our society. Marcus watched as the display showed a massive fleet of ships, sleek and beautiful like deadly birds of prey. What kind of fractures? Philosophical ones. The traditional faction led by the Conquest Council believes that might makes right. Any species we encounter must submit or be destroyed. It's simple, efficient, and it's worked for 3,000 years. The display shifted to show worlds reduced to ash and glass. But there's another faction. We call ourselves the Synthesis. Synthesis? We believe that true strength comes not from domination, but from integration. Not just adding conquered worlds to our territory, but learning from them. Growing stronger through diversity. New images appeared. Worlds where Veltar architecture blended with alien designs, where different species worked together as equals. Marcus studied the images carefully. The worlds in the second group look more alive. They are. The synthesis worlds are more innovative, more creative, more prosperous. But the Conquest Council sees this as weakness. They believe that treating other species as equals rather than servants dilutes Veltar purity. And Earth is caught in the middle of this debate? Zarlin nodded grimly. When we discovered your world, the readings were unusual. Your species shows technological advancement far beyond what should be possible for your age. Your social structures are chaotic but resilient. Your art and music display creativity that rivals our greatest masters. And your capacity for both cooperation and conflict suggested tactical thinking that impressed even our military analysts. Marcus felt that strange pride again. So we're dangerous? Potentially. But that's not what worried the Conquest Council. She touched another symbol, and the display showed human cities, human faces, human achievements. What worried them was that several synthesis leaders argued that humanity represented exactly what we've been talking about. A species that could strengthen the empire not through servitude, but through partnership. Let me guess, the Conquest Council didn't like that idea. They declared Earth a test case. If the synthesis faction could successfully integrate humanity as equals rather than servants, it would prove our philosophy correct. But if humanity proved too dangerous or too resistant to work with, she didn't need to finish. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. So my entire species is part of some cosmic political argument? Not just part of it. The deciding factor. Zaralin's expression grew intense. Marcus, the Conquest Council sent this evaluation fleet expecting us to find evidence that humanity is too dangerous to integrate. They want us to recommend orbital bombardment. But you claimed me instead. I did something far more radical than that. She touched a new section of the display, and Marcus saw something that made his heart race. Battle plans, fleet positions, weapon distributions. I sent a message to the synthesis fleet hidden in your outer solar system. Marcus stared at her. There's another fleet? There's been a shadow war for decades, Marcus. Synthesis and conquest forces maneuvering around each other, each side preparing for an inevitable confrontation. Earth was supposed to be the excuse to finally bring it into the open, and claiming me was a declaration. In Veltar law, when someone makes a formal claim, they're pledging their honor and their life to protect what they've claimed. By claiming you in front of the conquest fleet, I announced that I consider humanity worth protecting as equals. Marcus sat down heavily, his mind reeling. You started a war over me? I started a war that was already coming, Zaralin corrected. But yes, claiming you was the final trigger. Within hours, both sides will have to choose their positions openly. No more shadow games, no more political maneuvering. Either humanity joins the Empire as equals or they're destroyed. Either the synthesis philosophy prevails or it dies with your world. The weight of it was crushing. Marcus found himself thinking about Mrs. Patterson, about his co-workers, about billions of people going about their lives completely unaware that their existence had become a cosmic political statement. Why me? He asked quietly. Out of all the humans you could have chosen, why pick a random construction engineer? Zaralin was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned away from the display to face him directly. Do you remember what you did when you first saw our portal open? I watched. Everyone else was running or screaming, but I just watched. You did more than watch. I was monitoring human reactions across the city. Most showed fear, anger, or despair. But your neural patterns showed something else entirely. What? Wonder, excitement, hope. She reached out and touched his face gently, her skin warm despite its star-like shimmer. You looked at the impossible and saw possibility. You met an alien conqueror and asked questions instead of begging for your life. That's not training, Marcus. That's character. But there have to be other humans like that. There are. Millions of them. But you're the one I met. The one who looked at me and saw a person instead of a monster. When I claimed you, I wasn't just protecting one human. I was making a statement about what your entire species could become. Marcus stood up, pacing to the balcony railing. Below, the city continued its normal rhythm, unaware that it was about to become a battlefield. What happens now? Now you have to choose, Zaralin said. I've offered you a place among my people, but I need you to understand what that means. If you come with me when the 3 days are up, you'll be walking into the middle of a civil war. The synthesis faction needs proof that humans can adapt to Veltar society, that integration is possible. You'd be our test case, and if I refuse, then the Conquest Council points to my failure as evidence that the synthesis philosophy is flawed. They launch their bombardment and everything your species has built becomes dust and memory. The choice was impossible. But Marcus found himself thinking about Mrs. Patterson's casual acceptance, about humanity's stubborn refusal to surrender, about the look of wonder in Zaralin's eyes when she watched the sunrise. If I go with you, he said slowly, what exactly would I be walking into? Zaralin smiled, and this time it was fierce with hope. The chance to prove that two very different species can learn from each other, instead of destroying each other. The opportunity to become the bridge between worlds. No pressure there, Marcus said, but he was smiling too. None at all, she agreed. Then her expression grew serious. But Marcus, you need to know something else. The synthesis fleet will arrive tomorrow. When they do, the Conquest Council will call it an act of war. The battle for Earth's future won't just be political anymore. Marcus looked out at his city, his world, his species going about their daily lives in blissful ignorance. Tomorrow, the sky would fill with alien warships fighting for the right to determine humanity's fate. And somehow he'd become the symbol of everything that battle would decide. I guess I'd better make the most of these 3 days, he said. Zaralin moved to stand beside him, her presence both alien and comforting. Yes, because after tomorrow everything changes. For all of us. The second day brought visitors Marcus hadn't expected. Not government agents or military officials, but ordinary people who had somehow learned about what happened. They came in small groups throughout the morning. A teacher from the local elementary school, a nurse from Denver General, a retired mechanic who lived 6 blocks away. They didn't come to gawk or demand answers. They came to meet Zara Lynn. "Heard you folks might need some help," said Tom Rodriguez, the mechanic, holding a toolbox that had seen 40 years of use. "Lady here's not from around these parts, figured she might not know how things work." Zara Lynn studied the growing group with fascination. Marcus had expected her to be overwhelmed or suspicious, but instead she seemed energized by each new interaction. Mrs. Chen, the teacher, had brought homework from her students, drawings and letters welcoming their new neighbor from the stars. 8-year-old artwork depicting humans and aliens holding hands, playing together, sharing meals. "Children see things simply," Mrs. Chen explained to Zara Lynn. "No politics, no fear. Just curiosity about a new friend." Zara Lynn examined each drawing carefully, her violet eyes growing bright. "Your offspring show no aggression toward the unknown." "Kids are like that," Tom said, adjusting something under Marcus's kitchen sink without being asked. "My granddaughter asked me yesterday if aliens like ice cream. When I said I didn't know, she wanted to go buy some to find out." "Ice cream," Zara Lynn repeated thoughtfully. "I am unfamiliar with this concept." That led to an impromptu expedition to the corner store, where Marcus found himself walking down familiar streets, with an alien ambassador while being escorted by an increasingly large group of neighbors who had simply decided to adopt her into their community. At the store, Mr. Patel, the owner, greeted Zara Lynn like he'd known her for years. "Welcome to neighborhood," he said warmly. "First ice cream is on the house. Marcus, you bring your lady friend by any time." Watching Zara Lynn experience chocolate chip ice cream for the first time was something Marcus would remember forever. Her eyes went wide, then closed in what could only be described as bliss. "This is remarkable," she said after the first spoonful. "The temperature creates a contrast with the sweetness, and these small solid pieces add textural complexity." "Or," suggested Tom with a grin, "it just tastes really good." Zara Lynn laughed, the first time Marcus had heard her truly laugh, and it sounded like music. "Yes, it tastes really good." But even in this moment of simple joy, Marcus noticed her other hand touching a device on her belt, recording everything. This wasn't just cultural exchange, it was intelligence gathering for the coming confrontation. That afternoon, while Zara Lynn was teaching Mrs. Patterson how to make Veltar tea, which apparently required singing to the leaves, Marcus received an encrypted message on his repaired phone. The sender was listed as Dr. Sarah Kim, Xenolinguistics, Harvard. The message was brief. "Need to talk. Observatory at Lookout Mountain. Come alone. Humanity's survival may depend on it." Marcus showed the message to Zara Lynn, who read it with growing concern. "How did they know to contact you?" "I have no idea." She touched her belt device and her expression grew troubled. "My people have been monitoring human communications, but this signal came from an unexpected source." She paused, clearly debating something. "Marcus, there's something else you need to know. My claiming you has had consequences beyond what I expected." "What kind of consequences?" "Both factions are now monitoring you specifically. Every choice you make, every reaction you have, every human you interact with, it's all being recorded as evidence for or against integration." Marcus felt that familiar weight settling on his shoulders. "So when Mrs. Patterson was kind to you, when the neighbors welcomed you, it strengthened the synthesis position. But it also made the Conquest Council more determined to prove that human nature is fundamentally duplicitous. They're waiting for your species to show its true colors: violence, treachery, selfishness. And this Dr. Kim could be exactly what she claims, a scientist hoping to help. Or it could be a test, orchestrated by either faction to see how humans react when they think they're in control." They drove to Lookout Mountain in Marcus's battered pickup truck, Zara Lynn marveling at human transportation while simultaneously scanning for threats. The observatory was a small, isolated facility, used mostly by amateur astronomers and university students. Dr. Kim was waiting for them in the main observation dome, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and intense dark eyes. She wasn't alone. 3 other people stood with her, and Marcus immediately sensed they weren't academics. "Mr. Chen," Dr. Kim said, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't place. "Thank you for coming. And Ambassador Zarlin, it's an honor to meet you. Zarlin stiffened. How do you know my formal title? Dr. Kim smiled grimly. Because we've been expecting you for quite some time. She gestured to her companions. Allow me to introduce Colonel James Morrison, U.S. Space Force, Dr. Elena Vasquez, theoretical physicist, and Zhang Wei, who represents certain interested parties in the Chinese government. Marcus felt the world shift around him again. You people knew aliens were coming? Not specifically, Colonel Morrison answered. But we've been monitoring unusual deep space signals for decades. We knew something was out there, and we've been preparing for first contact since the 1980s. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, tablet in hand. What we didn't expect was for first contact to become a political statement. Ambassador Zarlin, your claim has triggered responses across multiple governments. We need to understand what's really happening. Zarlin was silent for a long moment, clearly calculating risks. Finally, she spoke. Your species is about to become the focal point of a civil war that has been brewing for centuries. The question is, what are you prepared to do about it? Zhang Wei laughed, but there was no humor in it. What can we do? You're talking about starships and technologies we can barely comprehend. You can be yourselves, Zarlin said simply. That's all you've ever been able to do, and it's more powerful than you realize. Dr. Kim pulled up a holographic display that made Marcus wonder exactly how much human technology had advanced in secret. Show us, she said. Show us what we're really facing. Zarlin looked at Marcus, who nodded. She reached out and touched the hologram. And suddenly the dome filled with images of massive fleets, battle formations, and worlds where the sky burned with the light of orbital bombardment. This is what the Conquest Council has done to 17 star systems, she said quietly. This is what they want to do to Earth. The humans stared at the images in horrified silence. Finally, Colonel Morrison spoke. And the alternative? Partnership, Zarlin said. But it has to be earned. Both sides have to prove they can work together despite their differences. Dr. Kim nodded slowly. What do you need from us? Tomorrow, when the synthesis fleet arrives, there will be a confrontation. Both sides will be watching how humanity reacts. Not your governments, not your military, your people. The ordinary citizens who welcomed me into their community, who offered me ice cream and kindness without expecting anything in return. Marcus understood. You need us to be ourselves. Even when the sky fills with alien warships. Especially then, Zarlin said, because that's when your true character will show. And that character will determine whether Earth becomes a partner in something greater, or just another cautionary tale about species that couldn't adapt. As they prepared to leave the observatory, Dr. Kim handed Marcus a communication device. If things go badly tomorrow, use this. We'll extract you if we can. Marcus looked at the device, then at Zarlin, then back at Dr. Kim. Thanks. But I don't think running away is going to solve anything. Colonel Morrison nodded approvingly. Good man. See you on the other side, Mr. Chen. Driving back down the mountain, Marcus realized that tomorrow wouldn't just determine Earth's fate. It would determine whether two completely different ways of looking at the universe could find common ground, or whether fear and mistrust would doom both species to endless conflict. Are you ready for this? Zarlin asked as the lights of Denver spread out below them. Marcus thought about Mrs. Patterson's casual acceptance, about children drawing pictures of friendship across the stars, about neighbors who welcomed the impossible with open arms. I think my species has been ready for this our entire history, he said. We just never knew it. Dawn of the third day brought no sunrise. Instead, the sky filled with ships. Marcus woke to Zarlin's hand on his shoulder and the sound of Mrs. Patterson knocking urgently on his door. Through his bedroom window, he could see massive vessels emerging from what looked like tiers in reality itself. Sleek, Veltar ships materializing in Earth's atmosphere with the silent grace of predators. The synthesis fleet has arrived, Zarlin said, her voice tight with tension. They're taking defensive positions around your major cities. Marcus threw on clothes and opened the door to find Mrs. Patterson standing in the hallway, fully dressed despite the early hour, holding a thermos of coffee and a plate of homemade muffins. Thought you two might need breakfast, she said calmly, as if alien fleets appearing overnight was a normal Tuesday occurrence. Quite a light show out there. Through the window they could see their neighbors gathering on the street below, not in panic or fear, but in clusters of conversation, pointing and speculating about the ships hovering over downtown Denver. Someone had set up a folding table with coffee and donuts. Kids were taking pictures with their phones. "Your people continue to astound me," Zara Lynn murmured, watching the scene. Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Kim. "Synthesis Commander requesting direct contact with you. Government representative standing by. Your call." Before he could respond, another portal opened directly above their building. This one was smaller, more precise, and from it descended a single figure that made Zara Lynn go rigid with what Marcus realized was fear. The newcomer was clearly Veltar, but unlike Zara Lynn's graceful beauty, this one radiated power and authority. His skin was darker, more metallic, and scars crossed his features in patterns that suggested ritual significance. When he landed on the rooftop across the street, the air itself seemed to vibrate with energy. "Commander Thaxivor," Zara Lynn whispered, "leader of the Conquest Council's Enforcement Division. Not good? He's the one who ordered the bombardment of 7 different worlds. If he's here personally..." She didn't need to finish. Marcus could see the fear in her eyes, and that terrified him more than anything else. But then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Patterson leaned out the window and called up to the alien commander in the same tone she used to scold kids for playing ball too close to parked cars. "Excuse me, young man. If you're planning to stand on that roof all morning, you might want to know that old building's not structurally sound. Mr. Kowalski's been complaining about the water damage for months." Commander Thaxivor turned to look down at her, his alien features unreadable. For a moment, Marcus held his breath, expecting destruction or violence. Instead, the commander spoke in careful English. "Thank you for the warning, elderly human. I will relocate to a more stable position." He moved to the adjacent building without another word. Mrs. Patterson nodded approvingly and went back to organizing the street breakfast, as if she'd just given directions to a lost tourist instead of tactical advice to an alien warlord. "Did she just..." Marcus began. "She treated him like a person," Zara Lynn said, wonder creeping into her voice. "Not a threat, not a conqueror, just someone who needed information." Marcus's phone rang. Dr. Kim's voice was tight with urgency. "Marcus, we need you at the state capitol building. Both fleet commanders are requesting a formal meeting, and they specifically asked for you to be present." "Me? I'm nobody special. You're the claimed human. In Veltar law, that makes you the official representative of your species in this matter." An hour later, Marcus found himself standing in the Colorado State Capitol building, facing 2 alien commanders across a conference table, while government officials from 6 different countries watched via secure video link. The surreal nature of the situation was lost on none of them. Commander Thaxivor sat on one side, his scarred features impassive as granite. Across from him sat the Synthesis Fleet Commander, who had introduced herself as Navigator Prime Silindar. Where Thaxivor radiated controlled violence, Silindar projected calm intelligence. "The situation is simple," Thaxivor began without preamble. "Young Starweaver has made an unauthorized claim, triggering protocols that should have remained dormant. The Synthesis faction has used this as an excuse to deploy military assets in violation of Conquest Council directives." Silindar's response was equally direct. The claim was made according to ancient law. The Conquest Council's response, deploying enforcement fleets to intimidate a newly contacted species, violates the Accords of Harmony that have kept our civil conflicts from spilling over into conquest operations. Ancient law superseded by modern necessity, Thaxivor countered. This species shows technological advancement beyond their apparent developmental stage. Integration risk is unacceptable. Marcus listened to the formal debate with growing frustration. They were talking about humanity like it wasn't in the room, like Earth was just another piece on some cosmic chessboard. "With respect," he interrupted, and both commanders turned to look at him with surprise. "You're arguing about us like we don't get a say in this." Thaxivor's scarred features showed something that might have been amusement. "You are a primitive species facing forces beyond your comprehension. What say could you possibly have?" "The same say Mrs. Patterson had this morning when she told you that roof wasn't safe," Marcus replied. "The same say my neighbors had when they offered Zara Lynn ice cream and friendship. The same say every human has when we look at something unknown and decide whether to respond with fear or curiosity." Sentiment, Thaxivor dismissed. "Irrelevant in the face of practical realities. Is it?" Marcus stood up, feeling anger build in his chest. You've conquered 17 star systems, but how many of those worlds are actually better for your presence? How many of those species are grateful for what you brought them? For the first time, Thaxivor hesitated. Sildar leaned forward. Answer him, Commander. How many conquered species have thanked the Veltar for their liberation? The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Finally, Thaxivor spoke with less certainty than before. Gratitude is not the measure of successful integration. Then what is? Marcus pressed. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been conquering worlds for 3,000 years, and you still haven't figured out how to make anyone actually want to be part of your empire. Dr. Kim, watching from the gallery, smiled slightly and made a note on her tablet. Commander Thaxvor's expression darkened. You dare to lecture me, primitive? I have seen the rise and fall of civilizations while your species was learning to make fire. Maybe that's the problem, Marcus shot back. You've been around so long you've forgotten what it feels like to discover something new. When was the last time you felt wonder instead of superiority? Zara Lynn touched his arm gently, a warning to be careful, but Marcus was beyond caution now. This morning, he continued, my 78-year-old neighbor welcomed your people with coffee and muffins. Not because she had to, not because she was afraid, but because that's who she is. Your response was to analyze threat levels and calculate integration risks. Which approach do you think actually builds something lasting? The room was dead silent. Then unexpectedly, Commander Thaxivor laughed, a sound like grinding metal that somehow contained genuine amusement. You have courage, human. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. He stood up, his massive frame imposing even in the large conference room. Very well. You speak of approaches and outcomes. Let us test them. Sildar tensed. Commander, what are you proposing? Thaxivor's smile was sharp as broken glass. A demonstration 1 week. Young Starweaver's human will attempt to prove that integration as equals is possible. He will be given access to a synthesis vessel and crew. If he can adapt to our technology and social structures, if he can prove that cooperation benefits both species, and if he fails, Sildar asked quietly, then the bombardment begins immediately, and the synthesis faction acknowledges the failure of their philosophy. Marcus felt the weight of 7 billion lives settling on his shoulders. And if I succeed? Then the Conquest Council will acknowledge that perhaps our methods require reconsideration. It wasn't much of a concession, but it was more than Marcus had expected. He looked around the room at the faces watching him. Government officials, military leaders, scientists, and Zara Lynn, whose violet eyes held both hope and terror. I accept, he said. Commander Thaxivor nodded once. So be it, 1 week, human. Prove that your species deserves to survive. As the meeting broke up, Zara Lynn caught his arm. Marcus, do you understand what you've just agreed to? You'll be the first human to live aboard a Veltar vessel, to work with our technology, to function within our social hierarchy. If you make even one significant mistake, then Earth dies, Marcus finished. I get it, do you? Because this isn't about learning to use alien tools or following different customs. You'll be representing everything humanity has ever been or ever could become. The pressure alone has broken trained diplomats. Marcus thought about Mrs. Patterson's muffins, about children drawing pictures of friendship across the stars, about his neighbors who had welcomed the impossible with open arms. Maybe, he said, but I won't be representing humanity alone, will I? I'll have you with me. Zara Lynn's smile was bright enough to rival HI skin. Yes, you. The first thing Marcus learned about Veltar starships was that they were alive. Not in the biological sense, but the ship responded to thought and emotion as much as to direct commands. When he first stepped aboard the synthesis vessel Harmony's Edge, the deck plates beneath his feet hummed with what could only be described as curiosity. The ship is evaluating you, explained Zara Lynn as she guided him through corridors that seemed to shift and adapt around them. Our vessels are grown rather than built, developed over centuries to form bonds with their crews. Like pets? Like partners? The ship will learn your patterns, your preferences, even your emotional state. In return, it will protect you and enhance your capabilities. Marcus touched one of the walls, feeling warmth and a subtle vibration that reminded him of a cat's purr. How long does that usually take? For Veltar crew members? Years of training from childhood. For an alien species? She paused diplomatically. Unknown. The ship's crew was watching his every move with the intensity of scientists observing a potentially dangerous experiment. Marcus tried to project confidence he didn't feel as Zaralin introduced him to key personnel. Navigation Officer Kethran was young for a Veltar, his skin bearing only faint starlight patterns that marked him as recently adult. He studied Marcus with unconcealed fascination. "Is it true that humans can survive in suboptimal atmospheric conditions?" he asked eagerly. "Our briefing suggested your species can function effectively in environments that would incapacitate most civilized beings." "We're pretty adaptable," Marcus agreed, not sure if this was a good thing or bad thing in their evaluation. Chief Engineer Vithalea was older, her starlight skin bearing the deep patterns of someone who had worked with ship systems for decades. She was less friendly than Kethran, but not hostile, just carefully professional. "The human will need to interface with primary ship systems," she stated to Zaralin, as if Marcus wasn't there. "Standard neural conditioning takes 12 cycles minimum. We have 7 solar rotations." "He's more resilient than you think," Zaralin replied. "Humans have remarkable pattern recognition and intuitive problem-solving capabilities. We shall see." The real test came when they brought him to the ship's control center. The bridge, if it could be called that, was nothing like the neat arrangements of screens and buttons Marcus had seen in movies. Instead, it was an organic-looking space filled with flowing surfaces and holographic displays that responded to gesture and thought. Captain Mordain was waiting for them, a tall Veltar whose skin patterns seemed to move like living constellations. She had the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute authority, but there was curiosity in her ancient eyes as she studied Earth's first human crew member. "So," she said without preamble, "you are the primitive who has convinced Navigator Starweaver that cooperation is possible." Marcus felt every eye on the bridge turned toward him. This was his first real test, and everyone knew it. He could respond defensively, try to prove human superiority, or attempt some grand gesture. Instead, he did something that surprised even himself. "I'm the guy who learns things by asking questions," he said simply. "Want to show me how this works?" Captain Mordain's expression shifted, showing what Marcus was learning to recognize as Veltar surprise. "You wish to learn? That's why I'm here, isn't it? To see if humans can work with your people. Hard to do that without understanding what you do." For a long moment, the captain studied him. Then she gestured to the primary control console. "Very well. Navigator Kethran, explain basic ship operations to our guest." What followed was the most intensive learning experience of Marcus's life. Veltar technology didn't rely on buttons or keyboards but on direct neural interface enhanced by gesture and vocal commands. The ship's consciousness could interpret intent and emotion, turning thought into action with a fluidity that was both beautiful and terrifying. Think of navigation not as directing the ship, but as suggesting destinations, Kethran explained, his hands dancing through holographic displays that responded to his movements. "The ship knows how to get there. Your job is to help it understand why you want to go." Marcus tried to touch one of the displays and jerked his hand back as information flooded his mind. Stellar coordinates, energy consumption calculations, gravitational field analyses, all processed in an instant that left him dizzy. Too much. Too fast, Chief Engineer Vithalea observed with what might have been satisfaction. The human brain cannot process ship-level data integration. But Marcus had felt something in that brief contact, a sense of the ship's vast intelligence trying to communicate with him. It reminded him of his first day learning to use CAD software in engineering school. Overwhelming at first, but with patterns he could eventually understand. "Let me try again," he said, reaching out more slowly this time. "Marcus," Zaralin warned, "neural overload can cause permanent damage. Then I'll be careful." He touched the display again, but this time he focused not on understanding everything, but on understanding the ship's attempt to understand him. The flow of information was still massive, but now he could sense the ship's confusion. It was trying to communicate in ways that worked for Veltar minds, but his human brain processed information differently. Instead of fighting the difference, he tried to work with it. Instead of accepting the flood of data, he projected back his own thought patterns, the way he approached engineering problems, the step-by-step process he used to understand complex systems. For a moment, he felt the ship's consciousness pause, recalibrating. Then suddenly the information flow restructured itself. Instead of overwhelming data dumps, he received information in digestible chunks, organized in ways that matched human analytical thinking. The bridge fell silent. "Fascinating," Captain Mordain said quietly. The ship has adapted its communication protocols to accommodate your neural patterns. I have never seen such rapid interface evolution. Chief Engineer Vithalia was studying her readings with undisguised amazement. The adaptation matrix is rewriting itself in real time. The ship is learning to speak human. Marcus felt a rush of connection with the vast intelligence surrounding him. The ship was curious about him, eager to understand this new type of consciousness that had come aboard. And in return, he was beginning to understand how Veltar technology worked, not through force or domination, but through partnership and mutual adaptation. Navigator Starweaver, Captain Mordain called. Contact Fleet Command. Inform them that the human integration experiment is showing unexpected results. Over the following days, Marcus threw himself into learning everything he could about Veltar society, technology, and philosophy. But more importantly, he began to see how human and Veltar approaches to problems complemented each other. When the ship's navigation system encountered an unexpected gravitational anomaly, Kethran's instinctive response was to calculate optimal avoidance trajectories. Marcus suggested using the anomaly as a gravitational sling to reach their destination faster with less energy expenditure, an approach that had never occurred to the Veltar crew. When Chief Engineer Vithalia was struggling with a system malfunction that required both precise timing and adaptive response, Marcus suggested combining Veltar intuitive system bonding with human systematic troubleshooting. The result was a repair technique that was both faster and more elegant than traditional Veltar methods. Your species thinks differently, Captain Mordain observed after watching Marcus work with her crew for 3 days. Not better or worse, but differently. Where we see harmony, you see opportunity for improvement. Where we see tradition, you see starting points for innovation. Is that bad? It is. Refreshing, she admitted. We have spent 3 millennia perfecting our methods. Perhaps we had begun to assume they could not be improved. But the real breakthrough came on the 4th day, when they received an emergency signal from one of the synthesis worlds under Conquest Council attack. The Veltar colony on Kepler 442b is under assault, Kethran reported, his voice tight with stress. 3 Conquest Council destroyers are overwhelming their defenses. Captain Mordain studied the tactical display grimly. We are too far away to provide meaningful assistance. By the time we arrive, the colony will have fallen. Marcus looked at the display, analyzing distances and time factors with his engineer's mind. Then he had an idea that made his heart race with both excitement and terror. What if we don't go to them? What if we bring them to us? The bridge crew turned to stare at him. Explain, Captain Mordain demanded. Your ships can create portal tiers in space-time. You use them for transportation. But what if you created a portal large enough to evacuate the entire colony? Bring them through space directly to safety? Chief Engineer Vithalia shook her head immediately. Impossible. The energy requirements alone would drain our entire fleet, and the precision needed to safely transport living beings across interstellar distances has never been attempted, Marcus finished. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. You have the technology. I might have the approach. Captain Mordain was quiet for a long moment, clearly calculating risks and possibilities. Finally, she spoke. If we attempt this and fail, we lose our ship and potentially destabilize local spacetime. If we succeed, she